So today we're going to be looking at my absolute favourite front end and its companion app. Let's take a look at ES-DE, or Emulation Station Desktop Edition. So ES-DE is one of my favourite front ends. I've been using it for many, many years, at least a decade plus, across a plethora of devices. So in order to get ES-DE, you need to subscribe to their Patreon. You only need to subscribe for 1 month. In fact, what they actually do is encourage you to subscribe and then immediately cancel. Once you've subscribed, you'll get automatically added to a mailing list and you'll get an email with a link to download the APK. And anytime there's future updates, you'll automatically get an email. If you lose that email, there are ways for them to resend it you, which I'll cover as well. So once you've done all that and you've got your APK, then you can just go ahead and install it the same as you would any other APK. So I've got mine here, so let's go through the setup. So to start with, we'll just cover the basic setup. So we'll open it up, and then it's going to ask us some questions. So we'll begin the setup, we're going to allow our permissions, we'll back out, we'll select our directory. So this is the ES-DE directory, so this is where it will store all its artwork and its metadata, its custom scripts, things like that. When we cover other front ends, and we can import the metadata that we've already scraped from ES-DE, this is the folder that it's going to be pointing at. So by default, it will just automatically create one on your root storage. So we'll just use that one. Now for our ROMs directory, it's already detected mine, and I have some folders in here. So ES-DE uses a very, very strict naming convention. So if you don't have these folders already from my other videos, then you can create them yourself. Or if you're going to start with ES-DE and you want to save yourself a bit of time, ES-DE will create the folders for you. So if you pick your ROMs folder, so you can just create a folder on your device or your SD card called ROMs, you're going to get this question. It will create the directories for all supported systems. So you can do that and it will give you hundreds of folders with a lot of systems you probably won't use. So what I advise you do is you create them and then you delete the ones you don't need, because this can speed up the boot. So we'll do that. So I understand. So it's going to search for games in our folders. Obviously, if you don't have any games yet, you're not going to see anything. If we go back to our File Explorer and we go to our ROMs folder, you'll see I've got hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of folders for systems that I'll never use in a million years. So what I advise you do is, if you're using Solid Explorer, if you press these 3 dots and select all, and then you go through and you just untick the ones you want to keep. So once you've done all that, you can just back out and head back to ES-DE. So that'll just make it run a little bit faster, especially if you've got a lot more games, because there'll be less folders to scan. So here we have ES-DE, and it looks fine. It looks quite basic at the moment. We've got our systems, we've got our lists of games. We don't really have any artwork, and it doesn't look the best. So let's head through our settings and sort some stuff out. So firstly, for Scraper. Scraper is what's going to scan the internet, it's going to scan certain websites, and it's going to download the relevant metadata, artwork, manuals, videos, box art, physical media, all sorts of great stuff. So I always advise using Screen Scraper. I think it is infinitely better than the Games DB. However, you do need an account. So you can go to screenscraper.fr and you can set up an account. I have covered this in my previous videos, so do be sure to check those out for a bit more information. But for now, I am going to use Screen Scraper. So for the actual scraping, what you can do to start with, for our first scrape, we're going to scrape all the games. However, subsequent scrapes, if it misses any, you can do things like no metadata, no game image, favorites, things like that. But we'll leave it on all for now. For scraping the systems, we will scrape everything. So we'll scroll down and we'll just select all. For our account settings, this is where you're going to log in to Screen Scraper, so I'm going to do that now. So then once you've logged in, if you could just go back, for your content settings, you can enable or disable any of these that you like. Obviously, the more you have, the more space it's going to take up, especially when it comes to things like videos. And also, for each one of these, it's going to use an API call. For the free version of Screen Scraper, I believe you get 5,000. So each one of these is 1. So if you've got 3, 6, 9, 12, you've got 13. So if you have all these, it'll be about 13 calls per game. So if you've got 100 games, that's 1,300 calls, and I believe it's a max of 5,000 on the free account. Could be wrong, but I'm on the paid account. I've got 100,000 a day, which is way more than any normal human would ever need. So you can also set your mix image settings. So this will automatically create an image called a mix image, where it gets the box art, the physical media, a screenshot, the game logo, and it kind of creates a little custom image made up of all those components. For other settings, you can set your preferred region. I like using world, and then you can set your preferred language, your automatic retries. So you'll notice there's also these toggles here for interactive mode and auto accept single game matches. So we'll cover interactive mode shortly. So what this basically means is, rather than automatically applying the metadata it finds to each game, it will ask you and say, I've found these games, is it the right one? From there, you can customize the search term if it's found the wrong ones or it's not the one you want. We'll cover that shortly. But for now, we're just gonna do a normal scrape. So we're gonna hit start and we'll leave this running. This can take a little bit of time. Obviously, I've got 308 games on here to go through, so we'll come back shortly. So there we are. So it's scraped 300 games, but it has skipped 8. So I know most of these will probably be the Android apps, but what we can do is if we go ahead and go back to our scraper, then go to other settings and we enable interactive mode, you can auto accept single game matches. So if it only finds one, it will just accept that one. So you can leave that on if you like it. And then before we hit start, if we go back to the top and click no metadata, and we'll untick the Android apps folder there, and we'll hit start. So it's not found anything for Megabonk, which is quite odd. So we'll skip that for now. Multidiscs is a folder for my GameCube, so I'll skip that. Updates is a Switch folder, and then it's found Megabonk again, because I have duplicate shortcuts. So I didn't find any of those. So what we can do, if we flip this over to the Games DB, and then we try it again, you can see we found Megabonk. And there we are. So now if we pick a console and we scroll down, you can see I've got all these lovely artwork. So this is a mix image. So what it's got here, obviously if I stop for a moment, it'll start playing the video. But we've got our physical media, a box art, we've got a screenshot, and we've got what's called the marquee, which is like the game's logo. So already looks infinitely better than what it did. So you can see, if I go to GameCube, or if I go to Switch, you can see I've got my updates folder in there, which obviously I don't want. So what I'm going to do is if I press the select button and then press edit this folder's metadata, I can come down and I can mark it as hidden, and then that will hide it. And then you can see it's kind of gone a bit faint there. Currently, I've got hidden folders enabled, but we can disable them shortly. So I'll also do the same for my multi-discs in GameCube. There we are. So we'll untick the hidden files and folders shortly, but for now we'll just continue working our way through the main menu. So for UI settings, this is where we're going to manage our theme. So you can come to Theme Downloader. So it's going to download the themes repository, which can take a moment. There are tons and tons on here. I did a video a while ago where I went through every available theme, so I'll link that below. And also I'm going to cover my favourite theme, which does require a little bit of extra tinkering, so stay tuned for that. So now that's done, so we've got all our themes. We can have a scroll through, you can play around, you can check out that video I mentioned a moment ago, but I know that of these, I really like Iconic. So we can just download that theme, and then some of these can be quite large in file size, so they can take a moment, so do be patient. Okay, there we are. So if we head back, we go to our theme, this is where our downloaded themes will live. So if we can change this to Iconic, and we back out, we now have our Iconic theme. And I think this looks absolutely gorgeous. So we've got our games lists in here that we can scroll through. We've got all sorts. But what you can do, as well as just having this version of the theme, if we go back to our UI settings, in the downloader, you'll notice we've got things like variants and colour schemes. So if we come down and we go to variant, you can see we've got all these different types of variants. So I quite like having grids, and I do quite like having the box art. So if I change to grid box art, and then we've got our colour schemes. So I quite like a dark. So we'll see what this looks like. So we'll take a second to load when you back out, but we can see we've now got a nice dark theme. And then if I go into a system with a few games, you can see I've got my box art in a nice grid. So the themes are very customizable, and I love that aspect ratio of the box art changes depending on system, because a lot of front ends don't do that. So for any of you who are working on alternate front ends, then do make sure that this is something you consider. So obviously I've still got my multi-discs folder there, so we'll be hiding that shortly. So you can also adjust things like font size. Most of the things like aspect ratio I just leave on automatic. And then you can choose how to sort your systems in a specific order, how to sort your games in a specific order, all lovely stuff like that. So for sound settings, you can customize the volume levels of the videos that play. You can also choose whether or not to enable videos for the media viewer and screensaver videos if you like. I'm just going to leave those on the defaults for now. For input device, so our controller type, I'm just going to switch this over to the SNES, which is the controller layout of the Thor, just so the buttons line up with the device. For touch overlay, I'm going to disable this because we've got a controller. You will get this warning because unfortunately ES-DE is not touchscreen compatible, but it doesn't really matter because you've got a built-in controller. But some people really like a touchscreen. I'm not too fussed. So there we go. And then you can choose whether to swap the A and B and the X and Y. That is entirely up to you. So now if we go back, you can see when I touch the screen, I don't get that touchscreen overlay anymore. For game collection settings, so we can have some automatic collections. For example, if I enable all games and then back out, I'll now have an additional system called all games. So if I just find that, there it is. So we've got our all games, and then in here we've got all our systems combined. Personally, I'm not a massive fan of having an all games collection, but that's entirely up to you. I do like having favourites though, and last played. So we can mark games as favourites, and you can also keep track of your last played if you want quick access. So to mark a game as a favourite, if we pick a game, so we'll go for some Pokemon Emerald. If I press my Y button, it will move it to the top, so you can change whether or not it keeps your favourites at the top, and then that will automatically add it to my favourites. So if I go to my favourite games, it's in there. You can create custom collections based on series or things like that. You can make your own. You can group them however you like. For other settings, so we can set some alternative emulators. So for a lot of these, it's using the RetroArch core. So if it doesn't say standalone, it's using the RetroArch core. So I want to make sure that for the ones that I am using the standalone apps for, that they're actually set to use those standalone apps. So I'm currently on PlayStation 2, but I can't see the emulator that I use. So how do we import extra emulators? So I'll show you how to do that now. So what we're going to do, if we back out and we go to Obtainium, and then we scroll down, we're looking for, in this track-only system, ES-DE Custom Systems by Glaze Belmont. If we click into this, and then click into that GitHub link, this is going to give us a file. So these two files. So we're just going to go to the releases. So this is updated quite regularly. You can see it was last updated a couple of weeks ago. So we're just going to download one. I'll download that and then download two. We'll get both of those, and then all we need to do, if we go to our Solid Explorer, we'll go to our downloads. I was just in there, don't know what came out of it. We've got those two folders, and if we go back to our ES-DE folder, we've got this custom systems folder. So we're going to open that up, we're going to press and hold, tap both of them, and then we're going to cut and we're going to paste, and that's it. So now if we completely clear all and we fully close ES-DE and then we open it back up, it'll do another scan, it'll load any scripts that we've added or custom systems, and then if we go back to our other settings, alternative emulators, and then we go back to PS2, you'll see I've got loads more, and there it is, Nether SX2 Turnip. So there we are. I do believe as well that for Switch, Eden is only part of that one as well. So most of these you won't really need to touch. So for the hidden files and folders, I'm just going to untick that, and then I'm going to untick show hidden games as well. So if you want to hide a game, then you can do it from here. So we can also enable alternative emulators per game, because I know that some of you might be running different emulators for different systems. You might have a couple of Switch emulators, a couple of 3DS emulators, so you can do it on a per game basis. So the way to do that, so we'll just let it reload. If you go to a game and you press your select button and you edit the metadata, if you scroll down, you can choose the alternative emulator, and this is on a game by game basis. So if you think Panda 3DS, which I'll be honest, I've never even heard of, you can select that from here as well. So we also have utilities, so you can have a game importer. So this is for your Android apps. So if you want to import stuff to Android apps, so you can access it straight from this screen here, you can import that way. So you can just press start, it'll scan your installed apps, and then you can just pick and choose which ones you want. However, you'll have noticed that currently this is only a single screen front end, which on a dual screen device feels a little bit underwhelming. However, what we can do is we can enable the companion app. So I'm just going to show you how to set that up. So first things first, before we download the companion app, what we need to do is we need to enable some settings that will also come in handy when I talk you through setting up a theme, which is my personal favourite theme, but it's not one that comes included on the theme downloader, and that's RobZombie's XMB theme. So we're going to go to other settings, and we're going to enable the enable custom event scripts, the browsing custom events, and the debug mode. And then we're going to back out, and then we're just going to quit Emulation Station. Over in Obtainium, we're going to scroll down, and we're going to need a few apps. The first one we're going to need is, in our utilities, we're going to want the ES-DE companion, so we're going to install that. So this is actually a separate app, but what it will do is it will read our ES-DE folder and it will adjust accordingly. But we're also going to need Mjolnir. Now, Mjolnir is an app which allows you to boot separate front ends on different screens. So it's basically, it allows you to run two at the same time. So we're going to need this as well. So we'll install that. So if we open up Mjolnir, we're going to get this little setup guide. So all you need to do is we do a basic home setup, and we select our top screen app, which we want to be ES-DE, and our bottom screen app, which we want to be the companion. We press next. So it's going to ask you to set Mjolnir as the default home, because we're not actually going to be using ES-DE as our default. It's going to be Mjolnir, and then Mjolnir is going to open ES-DE for us. So we'll set the default home. We'll set that to Mjolnir, and you can see it's booted into ES-DE, and it's also loaded up the companion app. So it's going to tell you what it's going to do. So we're going to click, yeah, man, I want to do it. So we're going to grant permissions. We'll go back. So it's going to ask you for your scripts folder. So obviously we're using the default storage location, so we can just use default. Obviously, if you're using it on an external drive, then you can browse for whichever folder you like. We'll create the scripts we need. We'll do the same thing for our downloaded media. And then we've enabled the scripts already, which is what we did when we enabled the browsing custom events. And then we will continue. So now it's going to want to check the connection. So if we scroll, you'll see that it has configured the connection. So now we're going to set up our widgets. So for systems, I tend to leave this just as is with the system logo, and it will pull some artwork for the system. For games, however, we want a little bit more control. So if I pick, we'll do Pokemon Silver. If I press and hold on the bottom screen, I can enable this widget edit mode. I'm going to show the grid as well. So we can create a widget. So firstly, I'm going to pick the 2D box art, and I can tap it and I can drag it. I can resize it however I like. If you just want the box art to be dead big, you can do that. If you want, for example, you can have the game description, which I quite like having, which is also the same description that's here. So that's entirely up to you. And then you can move the marquee, you can drag it round, you can have whatever you like on here. So I'll leave that like that for now. Not the best looking one, but you can have a play around. And then once you've done, if you just untick those three options so they can't be removed, then whenever we change game, it's going to pull the necessary objects, the widgets that we've set. You can do this on the system level as well, exactly the same. However, I just quite like having just the system name. What you also, if you just noticed then, if I swipe up from the bottom, we have our app launcher. So we don't need our Android apps in here. We can just use this launcher. We can get our settings from there. We can also customize some options for the companion app. You can manage which apps are available and all sorts of fantastic stuff. So feel free to have a play around with that in your own time. Now, a few things before we wrap up. So just to confirm that I've disabled the hidden folder, so you can see we no longer have our updates folder, and in my GameCube I no longer have the multi-discs folder at the top, luckily. However, if I go over to my, I think PS1 has some, you'll see I've got my Final Fantasy games, but they're all split into discs and their playlist file. So how do we get this so it's just one game entry? So I will show you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just swipe down from the top, and I'm just going to disable Mjolnir as my app for now, just because it's easier to do this in Quick Step. To do that, swipe down, go to settings, change your default app from Mjolnir to Quick Step. So this will get back to your normal screen. So now if I go to Solid Explorer, so you'll see I've got these folders. So I've got Final Fantasy 7 and Final Fantasy 8. So in here I have my 3 CHD folders, and I also have my M3U. M3U is a playlist file. So if I just tap that M3U file and I tap this little arrow in a box and then I open it as a document, and then I'm going to select SE text editor and I'm going to set that to always. So all this M3U file has is a list of my 3 discs in order. So you want to make sure the folder name matches this M3U file exactly. So the easiest way to do this is we press and hold and then press edit, and then we just take, we'll double tap and we'll select all. We'll select all. We're just going to copy that, and then we're going to back out, and then we'll rename that folder. We'll just paste that in. So there we go, and we'll do the same thing for 8. I'll just paste it and then add an extra I just for time's sake. There we go. So now it matches the M3U file exactly, and it treats it as an object. It's very, very unique to ES-DE. But if we go back to ES-DE and open it up, it's going to rescan our games, and then if we head over to PlayStation, we should see, so we've got our Final Fantasy 7 and 8. They don't have any artwork yet because they've not been scraped, so we can actually scrape them individually. So if we press select, we go to edit metadata, and then we go all the way down to scrape. It's going to do a search, and then from here you can just pick the right one. I'll just pick that top one, and we'll save that. We'll apply that, there we go. And then I'll do the same thing for 8. Nice and easy. And we'll save that as well. And now I should be able to just open these up, and they should just boot straight into DuckStation. And there we are. So last but not least, so I have a favourite theme, and that theme is RobZombies XMB. However, we're not going to be able to get this from directly inside the ES-DE app itself. So what we're going to do, we're going to go to a link. So it's this link here, it's RobZombie 9043's XMB GitHub, so I'm going to leave a link to this in the description. So you can see here, there's some setup instructions, but I'm just going to talk you through it anyway. So we're going to press code, we're going to download the theme as a zip file. This will take a moment. So there we go, once it's done, we're going to head over to our Solid Explorer. I'm going to open up my ES-DE folder on the left, and then we'll go to my downloads folder on the right. So I'm going to unzip this folder here. So then what I'm going to do is in my ES-DE folder, I'm going to come down to themes. I'm going to press and hold on that whole folder. I'm going to cut, I'm going to paste. And then I'm also, if I click into this, you'll see there's this setup folder. Then in there on the Android, Linux and Mac OS, we have this theme changed folder. So this is a script. So we'll press and hold, and I'm going to copy this back over to my ES-DE folder. So we'll go up a few tabs, and then in our scripts folder, we'll just paste it in there. So you can see from our companion app, we've already got some scripts in there, and I've just added that theme changed one. So now, if I just fully clear everything to force close ES-DE and open it back up, it's going to be able to scan those script files, and then if I press start and go to my UI settings and then theme, we'll see we've got my XMB. So I can select that, and then we have our XMB theme, and I love this theme. It's just like the old cross media bar from the PSP, from the PS3, and I think it looks great. You can also, as you can with all other ES-DE themes that have variants, you can set variants. So I quite like having the marquee, and I like the dynamic backgrounds. So you can have it so it looks like this. And then when you have if you press start, you can also have dynamic backgrounds video. And what this will do is if I hover over for a second, it'll start playing the gameplay video in the background, which I think is great. And then if we just go back to our settings and then change our home app back to Mjolnir. So I'm just going to tidy up some of these widgets. So if you want to delete a widget, you can just tap on it and tap the little trash can icon. So I like having the description, but I'm also going to add the mix image in there as well. And then I'm just going to resize that. Probably just shrink that game description a little bit. But I love having that metadata, and then when I change, I've got my mix images there. So you can have a play around. I love ES-DE, I really love the work on the companion app, I love the work on this theme. It's my favourite front end. It's going to take a lot to knock it off its perch. So there we are, that was our setup guide and deep dive look at ES-DE, Emulation Station Desktop Edition, my absolute favourite front end. If you like this video, I would appreciate a like and a subscribe. If you've got any questions, you can pop something in the comments below and I'll try my best to reply to it if I see it. You do want to be subscribed because I've got many, many more videos about the AYN Thor covering apps, front ends, setup guides, all sorts of cool stuff over the next few months, and you don't want to miss any of those. So make sure you like, make sure you subscribe, and I will see you next time.